Let's bring in Frank Isola. He'd be the guy to talk to when it comes to music like this. Frank, you want to add anything to this?
I figured it was the natural segue. We're talking hip hop, so why not? Why not bring me on? I like all those guys that you mentioned. I'm like you, Dan. I know the songs. I just don't know who played them. I went to a U2 concert years ago. I flew out to Portland. It was going to be the final night of their U.S. tour. It was like 3 days before Christmas. My wife's still not talking to me about this because I went. And Kanye West was the warm-up act. And we got out there and we were probably we were standing up. We were like three people from the stage. He was unbelievable. He was so good. He played for about 90 minutes. He was great.
And
so
U2,
I put him up there too.
U2 has always been great. I saw them when they had Muse opened up for them.
Yes.
And Kings of Leon opened up for them.
I saw that one too, yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw them with Damian Marley once, who does, like the reggae.
Yeah.
He was outstanding. Really good.
All right, Frank. Well, that was it. We appreciate you
All right, I'll see you guys.
Woj just reported that the Bulls landed Nikola Vucevic, a couple other players for Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr., and 2 first-round picks here, and that Chicago's still in the chase for Lonzo Ball. Why is it that other teams want Lonzo Ball, but New Orleans doesn't want Lonzo Ball?
I think it's because they're going to eventually have to pay Lonzo Ball, but there is a lot of interest in him. And you think about it, he's improved a lot. I think his shot has improved a lot. He's a big-time athlete. He's not going to be better than his brother, but his brother has a chance to be a perennial all-star. I kind of like that deal, though, for Chicago. Vucevic, there was a good stat that somebody just had. There are 4 guys in the NBA this year averaging at least 24 points and 10 rebounds. Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, all 3 of those guys are MVP candidates. Now you have Vucevic, who's putting up those numbers on a losing team. I get that. But you put him with Zach LaVine, and obviously the Bulls aren't done. I think this is a team that's headed in the right direction with that new management team and obviously with Billy Donovan as the head coach.
Let me go back to New Orleans and the Pelicans. When I watch, they're a below-average team, Frank.
I know.
I don't understand. What is missing here? I don't understand this.
Well, for one, they don't play enough defense. And I think Zion Williamson has been terrific, but on the defensive end, he's not good. And, we just mentioned LaMelo Ball. The one thing that sticks out for me the most about LaMelo Ball is he got to Charlotte. He's putting up good numbers, and the team has been winning. Now, I get it. He's in the Eastern Conference, so it's a little bit different. To me, that's still going to be the measure and the impact that you're really going to have on a team. And maybe there still needs to be some growth that has to happen there because it is a very young team, and it's not going to get older anytime soon. And they're just trying to navigate their way through the Western Conference. The West is tough. I think a lot of people are disappointed. I think they should be a little bit further along. But defense is the problem with that team. They just don't guard anybody.
Are the Clippers interested in Lonzo Ball? What's the likelihood? Where's his landing spot?
Well, I think there's a few teams. I think the Knicks, believe it or not, are still interested in him. I think if he went to a team like the Clippers, I think he could help them. The problem with the Clippers is they would love to have a guy like Kyle Lowry, but I just don't think they have enough to give the Clippers back, not only just in terms of assets, because remember they made those trades to get Paul George. They gave up all their first-round picks, but I don't even think they have enough to give back in terms of contracts. So to me, Kyle Lowry, the perfect fit for him would be the Clippers. You put him there, that's what they need. A leader, a guy that's been through it before, a tough guy. He's flopping all over the court. He knows how to draw fouls. That would be the perfect player. Lonzo Ball could help them, but does it take them over the Lakers if LeBron and Anthony Davis comes back? I'm not sure about that.
What about Kyle Lowry to the Lakers? Do they have the pieces?
That would be a big time move for them. And that's the thing. When you have LeBron on your team, and who knows, he'll probably play until he's 50. But you have to look at it like you have a golden opportunity right now, and if they can get him, that would be some move. I think Kyle, from what I had heard the last couple of days from a guy that's close with Kyle Lowry, is that he really, if he's not going to stay in Toronto, he'd like to go to Miami. I think that's something that appeals to him. But I think the Lakers have always been out there, and he fits in so perfectly with that team in terms of his toughness and his leadership. Could knock down a 3-point shot. Anybody that plays with LeBron is going to be that much better. And you put Kyle Lowry and Anthony Davis there, come on, that's a pretty formidable team.
Aaron Gordon, once out of Orlando, where do you think he ends up?
Yeah, Dan, there was a great story. You should look up the quotes from Aaron Gordon. He said that he had a meeting with management and he expressed frustration with the losing and the way that the team has been playing. Yes, that's why they paid you the money. So you're the one that's supposed to do something about the losing. Imagine how frustrated management must be that they're paying you all this money. I mean, that's some meeting to have. I got a kick out of that. The problem with a lot of these players, can they be the third best player on a championship level team? That's to me what you're looking at. I don't think Aaron Gordon could be your second best player and you could be a championship team. Yeah, Anthony Davis with LeBron, absolutely. Anthony Davis, when he was in New Orleans, got out of the first round just one time. So Aaron Gordon, I would think the ceiling for him is the third best player in a championship team. And I'm not so sure where that fits right now.
Frank Isola joining us, Nets studio host on Yes. He's got the NBA radio, the starting lineup, and you can see him on Around the Horn, and pardon the interruption. Are the Clippers a contender? Like, it feels like we don't talk about them the way we did, say, a year ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the way that everything ended in the bubble for them, nobody's going to take them seriously until we see them as an organization finally get to a conference final, which is something they've never done before. So Paul George is playing well, and everyone's saying, talk to me come playoff time. And then the guy that kind of, got off scot-free a little bit here is Kawhi Leonard. He was the one that came in and had them move heaven and earth to bring in Paul George. And listen, he did play well against Denver. He didn't have a great game 7, but I don't know if that's LeBron James and he doesn't have a great game 7. We're still talking about it today. So you have to put a lot on Kawhi. And here's the crazy thing, Dan. He could be a free agent. He could leave. Can you imagine everything they did to get Kawhi Leonard and everything he wanted them to do? And then come the offseason, whenever that is this year, maybe in August, he tells them, I'll see you later. I'm going someplace else.
Where does that lawsuit stand with the guy who said he helped facilitate Kawhi to the Clippers with Jerry West?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it's going to go very far. Was Jerry West probably speaking to somebody who's close friends with Kawhi Leonard? Absolutely. But did this person have anything to do with Kawhi going there? I highly doubt that. Dan, people were talking about this all throughout the season in Toronto. I thought that Toronto was going to be able to resign him, not only when they went to the finals, but when they won a championship. I figured, you know what, maybe he'll stay 1 or 2 years, then he'll go out to the Western Conference. But everyone was saying Clippers or Lakers all throughout the year. So how much did this person have to do with it? Just because you had a couple of conversations with Jerry West? I'm not buying that.
What about the Nets with what they're doing? Well, James Harden is doing with Kyrie out, Durant still out. Do they do anything at the trade deadline?
Well, they could be a team in the buyout market. There's been talk about maybe J.J. Redick. JaVale McGee now is off the board. He got traded. Andre Drummond is still out there. The one thing about Brooklyn, if you look at James Harden, what he has done. So last night, they held him out of the game. And Steve Nash, after the win against Washington the other night, and Harden took a knock to the head. He looked like he was out of it. His neck was hurting. He started the second half. I was surprised that he played in that game. He played against Portland. But Nash had said, I'm concerned about the minutes. I don't know what to do about it. I think they held him out of the game last night. He was in uniform. To me, that's a player's way of saying they're holding me out. He didn't feel like he needed to get dressed up and wear some crazy outfit that he's putting on a fashion show on the bench. To me, he wanted to be out there. He's carried the team. Kevin Durant is their best player. The face of the team right now is James Harden. Do you know that he's played 30 games? Kevin Durant in his Nets career has played 19. Kyrie's only played 31. This guy missed the first 13 games of the season with the Nets, and he's going to end up playing more games than both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
But do you think it's Harden's team?
I do from this standpoint. He's been the one carrying them. Now, when they get Kevin Durant, and this is the thing about the trade deadline today, everyone's going to be trying to make moves. We're assuming the Nets are going to get Kevin Durant back. They're saying it's only a hamstring injury, and I think now they're just being extra cautious. Nobody is acquiring a player like the Nets are going to get back in Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant is invested from this standpoint. He knows there's one result that he can get. You either win or it's been a bust. Doesn't mean you can't go back next year and try to win it. There's a lot of pressure on them. He is so happy with the way that Harden has played, and Harden is the same way. Harden forced his way out of Houston. He knows what his reputation was. He knows there's only one satisfactory result, and that's winning. That's why this team has been all in.
Charles Barkley said recently that Harden's the best player in the game and talked about, just what he does offensively. It's unlike anybody else, which I agree with the offensive side of this. I don't think he's the best player in the game, but he's on the short list there. He could have played back in the 80s or 90s
100%.
With the physicality there. I'm just curious what Jordan and Kobe, some of these players. Now, Kobe had a little bit of this era, but, spread the floor, can't put your hands on anybody. They would have developed into better three-point shooters because your offense almost calls for that. I said earlier, I think that, Mike and Kobe averaged at least 40 a game at the peak of their careers in today's NBA. They averaged high 30s back in
Yeah.
another era, what do you think, we love to compare eras there, but if I put Jordan and some of these other players in today's game, how much does their game change, evolve, and what do you think they average?
Well, you were living through it when Michael Jordan was playing, and you remember Doc Rivers, about what, 6'5", Derek Harper, 6'3", both strong, and they're both putting their hand right on Michael Jordan's hip and trying to guide them to where they want to take them. You're allowed to be really physical with him, and he still is leading the league in scoring, and he's winning championships. Can you imagine him in today's NBA with how many times they call fouls? He would spend the entire game at the free throw line. See, for me, it's a little bit different. And I'm sure you're the same way. I think Michael Jordan's the best player of all time. I never felt you were going to beat him 4 times in a playoff series. So I think if you put him in today's NBA, and if he wanted to, and he had the same drive that he had back then, because today with load management, who knows how he would be. But if he was willing to play 80 games a year, 80 to 82, he's going to average 30 to 35 points, and he's going to win MVP every year.
Yeah. I remember Phil Jackson came in. He was promoting his book. And I said, what would Mike average now? And he said he could see him average 40, 45 points a game.
Yeah.
But that's if your coach, if Michael was playing for the Rockets, where D'Antoni was his coach, then Mike could average whatever he wanted to average because that's what James was allowed to do.
Yeah. You're 100% right. And I think ever since Harden got to Brooklyn, if you look the other night, he had 17 assists. When he grabs a rebound, much like LeBron, his head is up and he's looking to throw the ball ahead. So I get it. In Houston, they wanted him to play a certain way, and all he did was dribble the ball for basically 22 seconds on the shot clock. Then he would take the step back 3. But he's been an unbelievable leader on this team. He's always looking to get guys involved. And in late in games, when he feels like he has to take over, he puts his head down, he drives to the basket, and he makes that floater. And if the defense commits, he throws the ball up for an alley-oop. It's amazing how he reads the game. He sees the plays develop like a split second before everybody else. It's the mark really of a brilliant player.
And it's the one thing that is probably not highlighted with Harden because we look at him as a gunner, a volume shooter. His ability to, and you say this, keep his head up and see the floor and see a play before it develops. That's rarely highlighted with James Harden.
Yeah, and I think, too, if you look at Mike D'Antoni, he had in Phoenix Steve Nash, a 2-time MVP in the league. And I think Nash was obviously the same way. The difference is that Harden at any point could just dominate a game scoring. That's what makes him so tough. So if they get Kevin Durant back and Kyrie Irving is going to be around and he's going to play in every game, it's going to be so difficult for any team in the Eastern Conference to beat them. Now, Milwaukee with PJ Tucker, now that Drew Holiday is back, look at the way that they've played. I think it's now 8 in a row. So they'll be a tough team. Philadelphia's done really well with that. Embiid has dominated the Nets a couple of times this season. So they'll present challenges. But and I understand it's a 7-foot, if that's Kevin Durant and his health. But if he's healthy, I just don't know how you can beat that team because with Durant and Harden, they're unstoppable. Then you throw Kyrie into the mix, who, by the way, has played really well the last 3 weeks. He's just not with the team now the last couple of games.
I'll leave you with this. If the Bucks had won the championship last year, would the MVP voters be looking at the Greek Freak differently and maybe a three-peat? It almost feels like it's being held against him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I always say that, too, about the voting. The media votes for it, and we all kind of like a story. It was like Karl Malone winning that one year when you probably could have given it to Michael Jordan. Like you could give it to Michael Jordan every year. You can kind of give it to LeBron. But remember, though, we did vote based on the season ending. I think it was March 11th or March 12th, whenever it was last year. And at that point, Giannis had done more. The team had the best record in the league. From the bubble on, LeBron was the best player. So LeBron was bringing up an argument which really didn't hold water. We had voted in March. But I do think you're right. And I think sometimes there's a little voter fatigue with an MVP. That's why maybe this could be the year for a guy like Damian Lillard, maybe Nikola Jokic, James Harden. So that's the thing, too. The media might be thinking, the way that you handled your exit in Houston, I don't like it either. But come on now. The guy is certainly an MVP candidate. But with Embiid out right now and LeBron out, it's kind of wide open. And Giannis certainly is making a move right now.
Is that Len Bias's jersey behind you?
Yes. The great Len Bias.
What's the reason behind?
I went to Maryland.
Yeah.
I was a freshman with his last year. What a senior year he had. They went down to Carolina. Carolina had never lost. They were number 1 in the country. They had never lost a game yet in the Dean Dome, right?
Yeah.
And that's when Len Bias went down there. That was that great play where he hits the 3, then he steals the inbound from Kenny Smith and dunks the ball backward. I mean, come on now. That's a pretty good college highlight.
How would you describe him for those who didn't see Len Bias?
Well, I think, if you ask Michael Jordan, he would, I'm not going to say he's on Michael Jordan's level, but if he had played for the Boston Celtics when that group still had a lot left, I don't think it's much of a reach to say that he would have been, that they would have won another championship. He went to Duke his senior year. So his senior year, they beat number one Carolina in Carolina, where they get every single call. Dean Smith standing up the whole time complaining about traveling. They went down to Duke, and I think he had 40 or 41, and the Duke students were bowing to him. They were doing this. So people knew that Len Bias was a different kind of player.
Yeah. Frank, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the day, and we appreciate you spending time with us.
Thanks, Dan. Good seeing you.
That's Frank Isola. He is a studio host with the Nets and also part of Sirius XM NBA Radio, the starting lineup, Around the Horn, and Pardon the Interruption.